Welcome to Seattle Sound, Then and Now, Seattle's new podcast, hosted by me, Owen Wright, guitar player for the band My Sister's Machine. It's all about what was going on back then and where we are now. We're going to have a lot of bands on the show, back from the early 80s all the way through the mid-90s. Also, brand new, younger bands for a new generation of musicians that we want to talk to and find out, what they're all about. We've got our director, David Yama, here. Say hi, Dave.
Howdy.
You're supposed to say hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
We've got J.P. as our tech support at the podcast board. Hi, J.P.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. And I'm happy to introduce our first guest on our first podcast, a good friend of mine, great musician, and a hell of a guy, Mr. Nick Pollock, singer for the band My Sister's Machine. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello. It's good to be here.
It was good to have you here. So the premise of the show is not to talk about how much we partied, because we don't know how much we did. We're lucky to still be here.
That never happened.
Allegedly. But I'm going to get right to it. So when you were younger and you first started listening to music, how old were you and what were you listening to?
Sixth grade, I was listening to AC/DC, Black Sabbath, stuff like that, and got introduced by this girl named Carrie. She brought to one of our classes in a portable in sixth grade. She brought Van Halen 1.
Oh, hell.
And that completely changed my entire life right there.
Do you remember, when you got your first guitar?
So first guitar was after playing the flute, the clarinet, and then playing the acoustic guitar for a while.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a Honor copy of a Les Paul, yeah, that was it.
I think one of my first guitars like that was something like that. It was a Les Paul Jr. It wasn't a Gibson.
It was black and it was cool.
Right on. So that was like 6th, 7th grade. And then from there on, I guess before you and Lane did Alice in Chains, were you...
Alice in Chains.
Chains. Were you in another band before that?
Yeah, I had a band from, I think I was 12 or 13 years old, and it was called Nemesis.
Ooh.
Yes. And playing the guitar, because I had absolutely no aspirations for being a singer. Mm-hmm. Back then, that came out of desperation for us, of course,
I remember it.
But I think...
Thank God.
So there was that, and then I played with some other guys from the high school that I was in, and then I met Lane and James Bergstrom when I was 16 or 17.
Yeah, you guys are young.
We were, and we played in the band. My wife likes to call it Slez. Because it was spelled that way, Sleze.
Sleaze. It was Sleaze, yes. Yeah. I remember that.
I came into their lives at the end of that naming of a band, and then we pretty quickly took Alice in Chains. Chains.
What's funny is that I was on YouTube the other night, and there is one video of Sleaze on YouTube with you guys playing, and it was a battle.
The rock one?
Battle of the Bands.
Oh, that I wasn't in it then. Johnny Bacolis was playing guitar.
That's why they lost.
They
didn't win that Battle of the Bands.
Of course.
Shit, that must have been, 85. Yeah.
That thing, I've seen the timestamp on that thing. It's 85.
That's when I was in the band out of West Seattle called Mistrust.
Oh, yes. Because we were practicing next to you.
Yes.
And then... things went like this, and then we'd been going to parties, especially at his house in West Seattle, forever. The one on 35th, Daytona.
Yeah, that was the house that I lived with my roommate, Jerry Whitlow, and I said, hey, can we have a party? It was like Saturday afternoon. He was like, yeah. How many people are going to come? I go, maybe 20, 30 people maybe. He goes, yeah. I go, maybe we should Visqueen the whole house.
These were referred to as the Visqueen parties.
So we literally... put down black Visqueen on everything in the house, and literally 150 people showed up, and it was a melee. The cops kicked everybody out
multiple times.
And as everybody was leaving, I go, just go into the backyard. Yeah, go into the backyard and be super quiet. So the cops are standing at the front door. I go, everybody's gone. Little do they know, there's 150 people in the backyard going, shh. I come out the back porch. Coast is clear. Yeah.
And we're back.
And let's party.
Yeah.
Good times. Yeah, we had a lot of parties like that. And that's actually how I met Jerry and Sean and Mike Starr, because they were showing up at parties. And, you know, the lineage of their band is one thing. And, you know, good friends of ours in the Seattle music scene. So you went from Sleaze, then you guys started Alice. And that went on for how many years?
It felt longer to me, but I think it was like a couple years. We were 87 up to
89?
88. Because once we parted ways, I started bringing Jerry from Tacoma to my parents' house, and then we would go to those parties.
Ah.
I'm the connecting tissue when it comes to Jerry and Lane. Then Lane and I met Sean and Mike just down on Alki and then parties. It all is all everybody's in the same parties, so
yeah.
So
all over Seattle.
Big cesspool.
Are you? And you would get a phone call on a regular phone, and sometimes it would be busy. Every now and then, somebody's parents would have like a tape, cassette tape recording machine, and so you know that's how you found out about a party. And then next thing you know, everybody's there. Hey!
Lane and I are the ones that organized many of those parties.
I'm shocked, but not surprised. So at that point, you guys started Alice, and that went up until about, 88-ish. And that's about when Mistrust, the year we got to the point where we had put out a record, and we toured. Spin the World. It was cool. We got to open up for bands like Stryper and Loudness, and got to go on a couple of road trips opening up for Alice Cooper, which was super cool back when he came back after a long hiatus. He had a real bad alcohol problem, and he went clean and sober. And his motto was, a bottle is too much and a barrel ain't enough. Which I thought, wow, that's a poignant, back then I didn't really understand what he was saying, but it was just like, even a little bit's too much for me. Like I gotta, and to this day, sober now for probably 40 years and still doing shows. And, but yeah, those are some highlights, back in the day. We probably ended up in the glam metal neighborhood with Alice in Chains and Mistrust back in those days, which basically went from, 83 through 88-ish?
Yeah.
Right around there.
I'd say so.
Good 5-year run of just hustling for the first time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the rest of that I never ended up playing at Guerrilla Gardens for some strange reason, but you have.
Well, we played there twice. The last time we played there, we either opened up for Green River or the very first carnation of Mother Love Bone.
Oh, geez.
And a massive fight happened.
Of course.
And we go running out of the club. I mean, it was like a full-on melee. And my girlfriend, Karen Mason, rolls up in her Camaro. Get in! She's like this hot blonde bombshell in this wicked Corvette and dealing all of our favorite drugs at that time as well. I was super glad to meet her. But Guerrilla Gardens, man. I was down kind of in Chinatown, wasn't it?
It was. We played at different warehouse parties that are down the street from there, but there's just sort of like the convergence zone for all these bands, especially like the punk ones and the metal or glam, whomever, was Guerrilla Gardens pretty much. Or the Metropolis? Was that
Metropolis is way, way before.
Okay.
That was...
Was it Guerrilla Gardens, or was it like it was pre that?
God, maybe Guerrilla Gardens was the Metropolis. I don't know. I never went to the Metropolis when the Metropolis was the Metropolis. So
Susan booked that.
That was some of her first gigs,
forays into the
falling into the world of music and whatnot. You know what? We're going to take a quick break here for our sponsors on Seattle Sound Then and Now. Seattle Then and Now is brought to you by Annie Irene's Coffee Shop, downtown Des Moines, the best coffee in Des Moines. I go there every morning. Also brought to you by Des Moines, the Cleaner, Seattle dry cleaning with pressing services and excellent service. Also brought to you by Design Develop for all your construction and carpentry needs, facilitation and building, Design Develop. let's talk about My Sister's Machine for a sec. We went on to do 2 records, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I never really liked being on tour. I was super homesick. I had a girlfriend, Kristen Carrington, who I was in love with, and I just couldn't handle being away from her. And so that ruined it for me. Thanks, Chris. When we first went out on the road, did you like it?
I quit smoking right as we were out on the road. 3 weeks into that, I ended up getting bronchitis, and it messed up a gig that we were playing down in Vegas at the Shark Club.
I remember that place, that big log cabin joint.
Yeah, the lady that booked that place was like going, "Hey, I'll put you up. Just promise me you'll come back here later," and stuff like that. It was extremely difficult for me on the road because I was a singer.
Yeah.
I've got really bad sinuses, and I'm like a natural barometer. But when we did that, I would, my voice wouldn't work. And so it was really painful. Ultimately, no, I did not like the road.
And when I remember back and we were traveling, our first few tours, well, our first many tours were in a van hauling a Wells Fargo trailer, and we would take turns driving, and you never really got a decent night's sleep unless we had like a day off. And, we'd remember we play those gigs and we get done, play the Mason Jar down in
back in the van,
fucking Arizona. We get back in the van at like 1:30, and then we had to be in Oklahoma in like a day and a half, and you got to drive like literally 12 hours, and you got 7, 8 guys in a van. I remember we finally outlawed smoking in the van, because remember when we first took off, everybody was smoking cigarettes.
Yes.
Our first tour run down through Sacramento, I don't know whose idea was, we need a roof vent on the van. And I'm like, we'll stop it at this guy's house that we know in Sacramento, cut a hole in the roof, I'll install a roof vent, and then we can all smoke and not smoke each other out. So literally a couple hours later, we finally get to a Motel 6 that we're going to stay at, and we drive through the underpass and just rip the thing right off the fucking van. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I ruined it for everybody, too, because I singing, nobody could smoke in the vehicle when I was going to.
Right, so we outlawed smoking.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they hated me, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, the best part, I think, on being on tour, when you're touring like that, is even though we had hotel rooms every night or motel rooms or
we
whatever.
didn't have them for a long time. Remember, we crashed on...
Oh, yeah, we did crash. Yeah, we
floors,
crashed.
yeah.
We did a lot of couch surfing, too.
Yep.
It's that 1 hour a day that we got to be on stage and play was like the best ever.
That it was.
And, the anticipation, maybe an hour before you play, and then the hour after you get done, you're all hyped up. But, man, you got another 22 hours of the day that you got to, like, sit in a van and drive.
And nobody's giving us days off because it costs money to do that.
Yeah, it costs dough. And, well, we're making, maybe $15 a day for per diems for food?
Yeah. Well, we'd go around the U.S. A number of times like this, and each time there's more people. And that was,
it made it better.
Payoff, right?
Yeah, it made it a lot better.
Totally. Way better.
So, Nick and I, we did 2 records together, and we toured our butts off. We played our guitars on MTV. So after we did our records, and we toured, and we did our MTV, what I wanted to get into, so the show is called Seattle Then and Now. I want to talk to Nick about after My Sister's Machine did its thing. Nick has been in a couple of poignant, really cool bands that I love. One was Tanks of Zen, National Guard,
Soulbender.
So tell us from, was it Tanks of Zen, Soulbender that you were in with Michael Wilton from Queensryche?
Yeah.
So tell us about those 3 bands.
Well, I started Tanks of Zen. I didn't really miss much of a beat. I was already writing songs for it. Came up with the name and was playing with a few guys. Tim Jones was in the band at that time, Todd Marvin, and Steve Renstrom. I ended up getting connected with Michael Wilton from Queensryche, and that was Soulbender.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Groves and Wes Hallam, both those 2 are from up in Coquitlam, Vancouver, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a record in 2002. We also played the first Lane Staley tribute. Yeah, that's and then the Tanks thing, I put out a record for that after afterwards, after kind of Soulbender Wilton was off, touring with Queensryche and stuff like that. And then I put out a record with Tanks of Zen called Love's Gentle Maw, and then started up a band called the National Guard. That's what was Aaron Tate from Minus the Bears, the drummer, Nick Reinhardt's playing bass on there.
Who actually plays bass in another band that I have called Old Lady Litterbug.
It's incestuous.
It really is. Well, he's a great bass player, and he's a hell of a nice guy, too. So why wouldn't you want to rock out with him? The guy's fucking awesome, right?
Exactly. And my friend Jimmy now, guitar-wise, from high school, Jimmy Chow's playing guitar in that.
Jimmy Chow, great guitar player.
Wicked guitar player. He and I are working on something now called, what is it we're calling it? One-Eyed Royals.
Okay.
And it isn't going to sound like anything that came before. Let's just say there's a bass synthesizer in my basement now and all kinds of other...
It's like there's a piano in my living room. It's like,
there you go.
You guys are guitar players. Yeah.
You totally got to mix it up.
I think so. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That is awesome.
Fresh.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we are going to be back with Nick Pollock, singer from My Sister's Machine, on Seattle Sound, Then and Now.
You're slipping halo, caught in a noose. We all want to win, but so many here lose. Outside, wanting in. At the door we're stuck in your shadow. Here you won't even face me. And now
we were lucky to be in a scene that had a whole lot of attention and everybody wanted to sign bands. We did a demo deal before that with, not Columbia, but Capitol, and they kind of hung us up.
They flew us down to L.A. Later that day after our meeting. Remember we went to the Beach Boys party in the parking lot where they
awesome.
Shipped in
sand.
Fucking
truckloads of sand and
turned their parking lot into a beach, and the Beach Boys played for like their 30th anniversary or whatever. That was super fun. But what ended up happening is that, just like all record labels back then, and there's a bunch of them, there's like 3 left now, basically. Capitol had their fingers on a couple other bands, and one was a band called Love Hate, and they had a song called Blackout in the Red Room. And their demo was being played on KNAC in LA, and people were really digging it. That fucking band basically, I think, took our record deal from Capitol Records because they were signed. I don't know if you remember that, but they got signed maybe a month or 2 after we had our final meeting. And so while we're just hanging out up in Seattle,
ready to
calling
go,
our manager and our attorney every day, have they said anything? And no, they haven't said anything. But, in a weird, odd way, I think it was a blessing. I mean, Caroline was a great label to be on, and they gave us a budget to do our videos for MTV. And we hooked up. We played some opening for some awesome bands.
During that time,
It was pretty amazing.
Caroline was really good. extremely respectable. Some of the acts that have been on there, I think they had Bad Brains for a while.
Yep.
Too.
Well, then they moved into more of a kind of a rock genre, and then they signed the Pumpkins, and they released Gish.
Yeah.
And that record came out, and that was pretty, I don't want to say mainstream, but it was very rock, real guitar oriented. I mean, that was a great record. The second label that we were on, Chameleon Electra, they pushed the living daylights out of a band called Jellyfish. This label just decided we're going to make this band, and that band sold like hundreds of thousands of records. They still tour, and great band.
That's how it works. It's definitely got to be music that people love. The band's got to be good, but it ain't going to go anywhere if you don't have the money behind it.
Nope.
That's just all there's to it. And hanging us up meant that Capitol Records had a demo deal that they had right of first refusal for a period of 6 to 9 months. And so they just waited the whole thing out.
And you know what? They barely even gave us any money. I mean, we recorded that demo at the Music Source.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? With Larry Brewer. I wonder what Larry's doing. Last time I saw him, he came to my house. He's like, "Oh, and how are you?" He's all crazy. Then he puts a gun on the table. I'm like, "Whoa, dude." My wife's going to be home from work in about 15 minutes. You really probably should put the gun away. And I'll tell you what. I'll call you in an hour. We'll have dinner. I never heard from him again.
Oh, my God.
But Larry was a character.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
I think at this point, we want to thank Nick Pollock from My Sister's Machine, Tanks of Zen, and National Guard. Awesome singer, great friend of mine, for being here. Want to thank J.P. for being on the board today, and director Dave Yama.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right. Well, hey, everybody, have a good afternoon. And this is Seattle Sound, Then and Now.